All right. Welcome again to all the attendees just joining now. My name is Matt McClintock, Senior Director of Marketing at ProcessMaker. Today's webinar is called Hyper Productivity, Process Automation with Generative AI. I'd like to introduce our speakers. Today we have ProcessMaker CEO Jeff Lortz, as well as ProcessMaker Chief Technology Officer Alex George, and of course, ProcessMaker founder Brian Reale. Thank you all for joining. Thanks to all the attendees from joining all over the world. Let's get things started with Jeff Lortz, CEO of ProcessMaker. Jeff, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt, and welcome everybody. Really appreciate everyone joining in today. We've got a great topic that we're going to cover. The advent of AI is on the top of everybody's mind, and how it impacts the process automation world is super relevant and important, and I think a great topic to discuss. We've got some great things to talk about, and also to show right as part of the webinar. But I thought it'd be sensible now to kind of take a look back and look at kind of how we got here. And if you think about the sort of the process automation timeline and BPM and BPA in general, you can trace it all the way back to the 80s. When IBM had a product as part of their suite, but really it was the early 2000s. When robotic process automation first sort of hit the market, and that's where the actual application of technology started to apply to automating repetitive processes. And in RPA, as everybody knows, is being able to automate manual repetitive processes, usually processes that are normally conducted by unskilled labor, and it was not until the 2008 timeframe where the concept of business process management and business process automation started to come to the market, and that was right about the time where the evolution of ProcessMaker started to occur. And it was in 2008 when the ProcessMaker Community Edition was actually released. So the open source version of ProcessMaker actually became available about the time that BPM and BPA started to really supplement the RPA capability in the market. And I threw the logo right of the 800-pound gorilla in the market as sort of an example of the evolution of the market as well. In 2008, I actually worked at Pega, and I was responsible for the professional services for North America, and we were delivering a lot of the big implementations of the Pega software. But what was happening in 2008 was Pega was moving to their Java-based version. So they were doing a major transition of their platform, from the client server version to the Java version. And I left before most of the fun began at Pega. But what their strategy was, and the types of customers that they had, were really Fortune 500, almost Fortune 100 companies. There were big banks and healthcare payers primarily. They were replacing call center applications. They were replacing, credit card dispute processing, bank treasury and check clearing operations. So they had, big, meaty, process automation tasks that the implementation was years long, millions of dollars, usually through big system integrators. And that's really what BPM was, when it was first introduced. It wasn't something for the citizen developer like what everyone had hoped for, but that was really the start. And as the industry evolved, more vendors came into the market, and more tools became available, with the goal of being able to provide, a tool set to the market where a no-code process automation development capability would be in the hands of, non-developers, right, to produce process automation and to help with digital transformation initiatives. And ProcessMaker as Brian, our founder, can attest, was right along for the ride. So, those vendors all sort of accumulated customers, went through, and joined digital transformation initiatives with various, companies in the industry, and a fairly robust industry was born around business process automation. But the reality of getting, a platform in the hands of, non-developers to really make an impact to organizations with a process automation tool never really reached full, fruition. The vendors, ProcessMaker included, started to differentiate by taking vertical market strategies, right? So, finding ways to penetrate vertical markets with pre-built applications or templates, or, abilities, right, to automate processes that are the same from, customer to customer, made the market easier to go after, for these vendors. And that was part of the strategy. And in a part was making up for the lack of ability to really engage those citizen developers, right, in order to actually, take matters into their own hands, or really democratize, right, the development of process automation applications, until the advent of AI. So as AI was introduced, and everyone's aware of what's happened over the past 12 months as it relates to generative AI, this is really a major unlock, right, for the process automation world. And with the combination of a full platform of BPA and IDP and process management applications, the AI really truly unlocks the capability to get to a democratization, right, of the use of the tool, and enables, really hyper productivity, which is the moniker that we've coined as the opportunity to achieve, with this full suite of capabilities. If you go to the next one. So this couldn't come at a better time, right? So if you look at what's happening in the economy, and this is just really looking at the U.S. economy, but I think the world economy sort of follows suit, is that over the past decade or more, the rate of improvement in labor productivity has started to slow, right? So in the last 30 years, right, we've seen a decrease in the rate of improvement in productivity, and in the last year and a half, right, that is slowed even further. And in fact, the last 5 quarters has been the lowest growth in labor productivity in recorded history. So there's a dearth in productivity improvement, and as everyone knows, it's labor productivity that drives output for companies, and it's labor productivity that drives the gross domestic product of the economy, and it's what everyone's trying to achieve, right, in order to improve their business. So AI unlocks the capability to improve productivity, but in the face of a negative headwind, right, of productivity decrease. And some of it can be blamed on COVID, but you can argue in the last 5 quarters the COVID hangover is over, and we still have a major challenge as it relates to productivity in this country and across the world. You go to the next one. But that doesn't stop the pundits, right? So if you go and listen to Accenture and McKinsey and all of the folks that are talking about the impact of generative AI, there's all kinds of heady statistics being thrown out around what's possible as it relates to improvements in productivity, right? So 50% productivity improvement in the next 10 years is possible, right? Which will contribute directly back into the economy and into the the profits of companies. And very, very aggressive expectations are set with regard to what's possible with generative AI. The only problem is it's difficult to understand how they're going to achieve that, right? So as a CEO, I look at AI as a way in which my marketing organization can do a better job and generate content for our marketing faster. But as it relates to improving the overall productivity of the company, it's we're stalled, right? At what point do we what do we leverage to actually get to the next level? So that's the same problem that every CEO face, is how do I, in a economy that's decreasing in productivity, where I've got challenges in retaining skilled labor, how do I get the productivity improvements that I need in order to be successful? And this is where ProcessMaker's platform, powered by AI, gives us the opportunity to close that gap. And we're really excited to show you how it's going to get done. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex, right, to take it to the next step.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Jeff. And as Jeff kind of pointed out, a ton of the work we're doing is really focused on continuing to drive that productivity, continuing to make it easier and faster for users of our software to be able to push that productivity into an organization or into their organizations. This is going to happen in multiple places. And obviously, Brian, in a little bit, is going to show us some of these. But just before we get into, the exciting demo part of this, I thought I'd cover a couple key components that we're working on. The first is the idea of just being able to take a natural language description of a process and build a process map. So that's the first set of steps, and you'll obviously see that today. We want to continue that capability so that we can build forms the same way, so that forms don't require lots of moving fields back and forth and identifying the content of the fields. Much of that should be automated. And finally, the idea that there should be help when you're writing a script, when you're writing an integration or beginning to format your code. There should be a simple co-pilot that's available to kind of help you through the process. So those are the three next big steps we're taking, and we're going to kind of organize them all into one set of AI assistants that will be available consistently throughout the platform. To be able to give you an example of what that looks like, the goal is to be able to, not only help generate code, but help improve code, potentially help optimize code. And then the generation stuff you see on the far right will be able to help with being able to identify exactly how your code should be structured and help clarify, opportunities for improvement or acceleration in terms of actual content. Finally, we also want to be able to work on the idea of being able to take an image of a process and actually create the process map from this. Our thinking is that in many cases, there are existing images, or brainstorming happens around a whiteboard, right? And we begin to talk through a process and you begin to map it out. Right now, somebody has the highly non-productive job of taking that whiteboard and then drawing it out in a process tool, right? If that could be automated, I think we'd save hours. We'd also really make it easy to brainstorm, to spend time kind of looking at 4 or 5 or 6 different models and then produce them all into a tool and try them out, right? So the whole idea is to give us the flexibility and give you the flexibility to be able to try these models or these maps in a really quick and efficient way. The second is, this is where we think another set of accelerations in productivity happens, because it won't take days or hours to build these process maps. It should happen really quickly. And the third is, the idea for us fundamentally is to be able to do large volumes of work that were otherwise just too much to do. An example of that is in many companies that go through SOC 2 compliance or ISO compliance, there's a whole large list of processes that have been defined within the firm. When a process changes, the method or the effort to go through modifying that process map is really quite significant. It'd be really easy if a user could just modify that process in the printout that already exists and have the underlying process be modified also, right? And these are just some examples of where we think this could become a powerful set of tools. But in conjunction with this, our real focus, our North Star in terms of effort, is a couple big things. We want to be able to drive the best user experience, the best experience from a design perspective, and we talked about some of those capabilities. We also want to move to more of a collaborative designer so that 2 or 3 people can collaborate and work together in building their process and look at the same process and make notes and engage and review with each other so that they know that the process coming out looks and feels and delivers to the intent that the whole business had. Finally, over time, we'll also be building an A/B testing capability. And the idea here is that, once we've built that initial process and it's gone live and it's out in the wild, it'll be really powerful to be able to modify that process and test and see if that, our second process is any more efficient than the first one. And it gives us the data with which to iterate, right? The data with which to continually improve our processes over time and continually make sure that, the gains in productivity we've seen, continue to accelerate within the firm. The other set of real tools that we're focused on are around kind of making sure the solution is in fact fast. We want this to be the fastest engine, and we want to measure end-to-end process speed. We want to be able to enable process testing and then identify in analytics where the slowdowns are. So we want to be able to show you where the bottlenecks are, so that you can begin to address those bottlenecks and begin to identify, if there's a better way around each of those bottlenecks. Is it a single approver in the system? Is it routing to make it easy so that, if a approver is out, we send it to another approver? Is it the ability to be able to identify, whether some things can be auto-approved? All of those are scenarios that we really want to be able to address in an efficient way. But to kind of Jeff's original point, we think of this set of capabilities or ProcessMaker as a whole as really being able to achieve 3 sets of capabilities. The first set of capabilities is to be able to understand what a user is attempting to do once a process is built. The second is to be able to make a set of decisions. And the third is to be able to resource those decisions, right? To be able to understand, where we get the answer to the question that user posed, right? To be able to complete that process that initial user wanted to start. And to be able to make that possible, we've really focused on a set of capabilities that you see here. This is a bit of an eye chart, so I do apologize. But the idea is that on the left are all the ways that a consumer can or a user can articulate intent. It could be IoT coming from a specific device. So it could be from a vehicle, it could be a GPS signal, and we're calculating mileage, for example. It could be from an image of a transcript, and we're trying to determine, whether there's an equivalency table. It could be a web form, which we've all used many times. It could be an SMS with a picture of, a receipt or an invoice, right? It could be any one of the components you see on the left. And the idea is we take those components and then have the right kind of decision tools. And we already have a BPM that you're very familiar with. We have a decision engine, which went into the software in spring. And we're continuing to add capabilities. The IDP obviously is already there also, but we're continuing to add capabilities, including the ability to have, proactive decisions being made. Of course, there's always the need to escalate to a human for approvals or, when a process fails. And then, of course, we always want to be able to have the analytics around how the process is performing. So you see that kind of in the middle of the stack. And then finally, on the right is the ability to go source the information or the response from wherever it's relevant. So in my transfer credit example, once we've taken a picture of that transcript, we should be able to identify what matching grades or what matching courses exist at our university. If it's an invoice, we should be able to go match it against the ERP and see if there's a contract for this open invoice that we just received, right? That's where the components on the back end are able to answer or respond with the content that's relevant to be able to make the decisions that drive the user experience. And this set of tools over time, we expect to continue to expand, but we believe that with this set of tools, our clients, will be able to build for almost any process, right? And we'll have kind of all the tools in one place to be able to solve for all the unique process optimizations that any business would need. With this, I'm going to hand over to Brian, who's actually going to walk us through some real live demos.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Jeff. So I get the fun part here of doing a live demo. Alex was kind enough to let me do this. I think he knows I love doing live demos. So let's share the screen, and I think we should be good. So really, really exciting. I think Jeff laid out a great history of what's taken us to where we are today. A great vision of what's happening in kind of global economies that we're tracking to try and improve our business. And Alex has just provided this unbelievable, incredible vision of where we can go with our technology, which I'm going to show you part of that right now. So for those of you who have been designing processes with ProcessMaker since the beginning, which is now more than 12, 13 years, you will kind of recognize this idea of you are dropped into the solution and you are given a choice of building your own process or maybe starting with a template. So for those of you who have not seen the designer in a while, we do have a great library of templates now. You can also visit our gallery here and find additional templates. So you can filter by your area, accounting, finance, banking, kind of find whatever templates it is that you're looking for. In this case, though, we obviously want to show our AI. So instead of starting with a template or instead of starting by building your own process, let's try generating one from text, which is just an unbelievable idea. I mean, if I think back to when we started ProcessMaker, the first version of ProcessMaker back in 2008, the idea that you could actually design the process with just text is kind of difficult to fathom. But now all we have to do is click on generate from text, and we're dropped into a totally designer. You'll see there's an area where we're going to write our text, and then there's a couple hints. So kind of ideas of how to make sure you're prompting the AI correctly to get the results you want. But you don't really have to look too much at those. So let's just let's start with a couple things. So let's kind of think of a couple different processes that we can create. So let's start with the most basic one, the one that's been used as a demo process for probably since the beginning of BPM, BPA, which is create a leave of absence process. All right, and let's just hit generate and see what happens. And we'll generate a few here, and then we will see kind of what flexibility we have to modify the results. So you can see down in the bottom, it says generating. So it is generating a process, and it has generated a version of a leave absence process. Got some strange lines on this one. So you will get some behaviors that sometimes aren't totally anticipated. Let's change to another one. Create a purchase request process. Let's hit generate and see what happens this time. So now we're creating a finance process, and it is a purchase request process. So there's a couple interesting things to note here. First of all, for those of you, I've taught BPMN classes, BPMN standard classes for a number of years. In fact, worked with Bruce Silver, for those of you who know his book about BPMN and style. It's called Style Guide, Elements of Style for BPMN. There are certain best practices that we want to take into consideration when designing. And a lot of that has to do with labeling. And a lot of the labeling really has to do with how we label. So for example, a task is always a unit of work. And so the best way to label a task is with a verb and an object. So you can see here, the beauty of the AI is we no longer have to worry about our designers using poor practices. So instead of saying, purchase request form or purchase request form filled or purchase request form gets filled, anybody who's a stickler for good design principles in BPMN wants to see exactly what we see here, which is verb object. Fill out what? Fill out purchase request form. That is the unit of work being performed by that individual. Then it's moving to another one, ideally in another swim lane if we were using swim lanes. And this time it might be a manager. So it is review, that's the action, and the object is the purchase request. So review purchase request. And then we get to a gateway, and the gateway is also perfectly labeled, approved question mark. So again, these may seem like small details, but if you're creating a center of excellence in your organization and you're going to have call it a dozen designers. And this is typical of some of our larger clients that would have thousands, tens of thousands of employees. They're generally going to have a center of excellence. They're going to generally train that center of excellence to develop processes and field requests from different business units. You want to make sure everybody's designing in the same way. And this is a best practice. And then even the end events are formatted correctly, request approved. So it's kind of a past participle format that we like to see. So let's do another one here, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper. Create an invoice approval process. And let's see what happens here. A couple other things, that are interesting. So besides the hints, I'll show you in a moment. There's a full history that's being stored here as we're creating these. So if we get different types of results and we don't like some of the results, we can always go back and decide which one we want to use. So in this case, we have a very simple process, but it is that classic sort of submit an approval, review the invoice. Is it approved? Yes or no? And then it's either approved or rejected. But let's make it a little more interesting. So let's use an automated task to receive the invoice and extract the information. Then let's say if the invoice is less than $1,000, then just pay the invoice, or just just pay the invoice. If the invoice is more than 1,000, then send for a director approval and then pay the invoice. All right, so again, we just made it a little more complete here, and let's regenerate. So we're gonna take this base model, and we're basically changing the information we're feeding to ProcessMaker AI, changing the prompt so that what we get presented back to us should be a bit different. So, okay, this one's more interesting. Start the invoice approval, receive the invoice, and then use an automated task. So you can see it's pulling a different type of task element. Here it's showing a script task, could show a connector task. To Alex's earlier point on the different resources we use, maybe it needs to, if this wasn't an invoice approval process, maybe it needs to use an RPA bot to go and perform an automated task. So then once we extract that information, and the beauty, of course, of that is ProcessMaker now has a full intelligent document processing capability. We call it ProcessMaker IDP. And so we have world-class ability to extract information from almost any type of document, whether that's a PDF, an email, Excel sheets, and do that for lots of different document types. So we'll extract that information, and then we want to immediately take that to a gateway and decide, well, based on the amount, if it's less than 1,000, go ahead and pay it. If it's more than 1,000, send it for director approval and then pay it. And so that's pretty good. So let's add another couple sentences in here. The system should then generate a PDF summary and send it to the department head. So let's see what that one gives us. So let's regenerate. And again, the beauty here is we talked about, we opened up with this idea of democratizing process design, and really, starting with basic language and then being able to kind of just type out what you want and get a result. I can't think of something that would be more democratizing than that. And then to have it kind of add in the right grammar and the right formatting for everything makes it even that much more powerful. So here I can take this model, I can move it around, I can see, okay, generated a PDF and sent an invoice summary, and instead of sending an invoice summary, so here it showed sending an invoice summary via mail. Let's say the system should then generate a PDF summary and send it to the department head to be signed with DocuSign. Let's see what it does in this case. So again, do one last generation here, and then I'll show you what we can do with this model. So the interesting thing here is I'm able to call out when I think I want to use a script task, when I might want to use a PDF generation, and in this case, when I want to use one of our special connectors, or maybe a block or a sub-process. I'll talk about that in a moment, our PM block. So in this case, it actually called our DocuSign signature capability, signature connector, and it recognized that if the director is going to approve it, then we want to sign it with a PDF summary, and it actually put the generate the PDF up with the case of the less than 1,000. So maybe that's right, maybe it's not. But either way, we might say, okay, great, this is pretty close to what I want. So let's hit use this model. The system is smart enough that it gives it a name, it gives it a description, it'll give it a category. So now all I have to do is hit save, and the process is created, and voila, it loads it directly into the ProcessMaker modeler. So inside the modeler, I now have kind of full manipulation capabilities, right? I can decide, you know what, I didn't actually want that PDF summary. I just want to pay the invoice directly. So I'll get rid of that. So now I'm in full edit mode. So I generated it using the kind of lowest common denominator, text. And by the way, this is on our website today. That ability to use the text to process is on the website today, along with a number of other intelligent document processing examples that you can try for free. It's a very simple sign up, and you can just begin using it, and you can download it and send it to your colleagues or use it however you want to use it. In this case, of course, I'm importing it directly into ProcessMaker, and now I have the full design capabilities. So I won't go into too much depth here, but again, now I'm looking at the process. I can come in here and say to this, for this script, if this is a script task, I can say, great, well, which script do I want to choose? So I would just come over here and assign a script to this task, or I could do the same for a human task. In this case, it's going to look for a screen or a form. So it's going to say, well, let's look at our library of screens over here on the right and assign a screen. And the gateway, I can come in and begin editing that. So these are my elements: scripts, screens, and the other pieces there. But the other piece I think that's worth mentioning are the PM blocks. So here's where you might store custom sub-processes and use these custom sub-processes later in a process. That's kind of nice to be able to do. If I come back into one of these processes, I'll just go into a different one this time. I can also then access my full palette and begin editing whatever process I brought in with all of our different specialized connectors. So again, I will just summarize by saying, if you now go to our designer and click process when you're in the solution, it's going to put you into this screen where you can choose a template, you can build your own, or you can generate from text. And if you choose to generate from text, it drops you straight into a window like this. And we'll do one last one to end, which is create a student financial aid application process. Let's generate it, and I'll show you one other feature here that I would encourage you all to try. So this is, again, going to generate that process like we saw before. I've got the process here, but let's say put the process in Swahili. So I don't know how many of you on this call might speak Swahili, but let's see if it recognized the format that I asked it to do so in. And there you go. We now have this process in Swahili. So if there are any Swahili speakers out there, you'll probably find this familiar. You can translate the processes into more than 100 languages. So we encourage you to try that out. And with that, I will stop the share and hand it back to Matt for Q&A.
Thank you, Brian and Jeff and Alex for presenting today. Now we're going to open it up for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function in Zoom. We got our first question from Olili. Question about the technical implementation. Is the generative AI engine able to directly generate the BPMN model, or is there some intermediate format produced that is then converted into BPMN? Alex, Brian, which one of you want to take that one?
I can take that one. Yeah, so we are not generating directly to the BPMN. We're generating to an intermediate from which we then generate the BPMN.
Okay, thanks, Alex. One other question. What is the package used to generate the PDF? I'm trying to generate a PDF using a screen with JavaScript calculated functions that add HTML, and there's not enough documentation to do it. Alex, you wanna take that one?
Yeah, so we're using a standard PDF generator. It's not a specific package that is separate of the platform. We can, if this person's anonymous, if you could give us, we can connect through support and work through the exact scenario you're attempting to solve for.
Okay. Thanks, Alex. I got another question here. So great demo. I just saw an article today about GPT-4. Is the plan to also detect, say, a whiteboard session image and generate BPMN that way?
So yes, it's actually one of the slides that we showed. Our goal is to be able to do exactly that. So the ability to be able to look at a whiteboard and take a picture, or to be able to, take a picture of a piece of paper.
Got another question. Where do you see AI having the biggest impact for BPA? Alex, you want to take that one?
Brian, Jeff, I think maybe.
Jeff?
Well, I'll jump in on that one. So, what we're showing here is great. There are kind of three types of general users in BPA. You have your system administrators, those that are kind of keeping it running, setting it up. You have your designers, and then you have your users. So if we look at our larger organizations that are using ProcessMaker, maybe there's a dozen designers, and maybe there's 100,000 users. So anything we can do to impact the experience of those users is potentially going to have a larger impact than something we can do to impact the designer. So in this case, it's beautiful what we've built. You can write text and generate a process, or as Alex pointed out, soon you'll be able to click and shoot, you take a picture of a whiteboard and have that appear to your colleagues. But we believe that there is an enormous amount of time that's lost in business processes. And generally that time is lost around the humans. We've already optimized to milliseconds what we can do with APIs, what we can even do with bots. But when there's a human decision, it's because we believe a human needs to be involved. But does a human really need to be involved? Or can a human be aided by all of the history logs of positive outcomes that came before? Right. So that is the purpose of AI, this ability to draw inferences and come to a conclusion via inference. And so there's an enormous opportunity there. So we have customers processing tens of millions of cases a year, and that is touching millions of hours of human time a year. And if we look at what the data shows, we can actually now predict the best way to solve each of those human decisions, and then we can sort of guide the human to making the right decision. And then eventually the human might say, just like a human, a driving car might say, I now feel confident that the car is going to make the turn the right way. Well, let the AI make the turn and make that decision at the human decision point.
Yeah, I might add one thing. So I mean, I think there's two bottlenecks right now, right? And, the first bottleneck is getting adoption by the citizen developer, right? Which we talked about, at the beginning. And what Brian demonstrated, earlier is really the unlock, right, for that blockage, right? And the second one is in the labor productivity world, the major challenge is, there's not enough knowledge workers, right? And that's where labor productivity is sagging the most. So if we can somehow apply process automation, right, to take tasks and work away from your most skilled workers so that they can work on higher value activity, then that's where we really get the boost in productivity. And that's some of the stuff that Brian just mentioned, right, with automated decisioning, right, being able to do the things that only a skilled worker can do is really a big leap forward, right, in our ability to provide improved performance. And those are, I think, the two big unlocks that we're talking about.
All right, thanks, Brian and Jeff. I have a couple more questions here. So from Lacey, this is all very exciting. Do you think that AI can assist in designing screens and interfaces by dictation? I think natural language is the insinuation there, in addition to processes. So maybe Alex?
Yeah, so Lacey, absolutely. This is a key focus for us and, is part of our goal for the fall release.
Okay, and another question on the product side. So apart from IDP, so that's intelligent document processing, are there any other components or modules under the offering of ProcessMaker?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're thinking of other modules, and there's a series of those that are available on our website and described in more detail. But some examples are not only IDP, but decision engines, so that DMN decision modules are also possible. And then, in addition to that, we continue to add AI capabilities. There's a growing analytics capability that's being added. And those are the ones that already are available now. The next set, I apologize, I forgot to mention mobile. So that also is available now. The next set will be focused on the point that both Brian and Jeff made a few seconds ago around being able to first support decision makers by helping them prioritize their inbox, or by suggesting things that could be quickly approved versus tasks that require more focus or more energy. And then that will progress to a place where we're hoping that automation can actually begin to make those decisions on behalf of that decision maker.
Thanks, Alex.
And I would just add, Matt, for those that we've introduced this a little while back, but for those that don't remember it, you can already also use natural language to filter and search your inbox. But for us, filtering and searching the inbox is actually much more than that. You could say, hey, I want to see all tasks that are taking longer than a day, and I want to set an alert and send it to these 3 managers. So that's a common request that we've seen over many years, and that's really a function of business activity monitoring, which is something that comes with ProcessMaker out of the box. So it's not just inboxes; it's actually monitoring and alerting in real time. And you can now describe that in natural language and set it up in seconds.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Alex, as well. So this one's a little more controversial. Will AI replace skilled workers? No, that's a question that's been asked quite a bit. I don't know who wants to take that one.
Yeah, I mean, I can take the first shot at it. I don't think, absolutely not, right? I mean, I think the idea here is to unlock, the potential of skilled workers is what AI will do, right? And I think that's probably the best way to summarize it. And today, without a framework around the AI capabilities that are available, to companies today, it's difficult, right, to apply them, right? So, a AI chatbot, right, all by itself, doesn't provide a lot of benefit, right, to an organization, it needs to be levered by, another framework in order to have it really, create a powerful outcome, right, for the organization. And that's really what the BPA engine does, and specifically what ProcessMaker can do faster than any other vendors on the market, as hopefully we're able to demonstrate today. But the goal here is to be able to reduce the challenge of not enough, right, skilled workers, to actually getting skilled workers working on the things that they're most talented to support and adding the most value.
Thanks, Jeff. A product question here. So once the process mapping is complete, can ProcessMaker automatically generate the script? So I think that's referring to a script task here, Alex.
Yes, that's so script tasks and screens, same thing, are focused, our focus is for the fall release.
I think though maybe that question was also, could it document the process? Was that the, after your process?
That's actually a different question.
Okay.
In terms of doing a demo, I don't think we have time for that right now, but we can certainly set something up, or we'll definitely be showcasing it in future webinars and live streams. I got a couple other questions here. What specific processes can benefit from AI in the banking industry? And I have a similar question on higher ed. Maybe we can tackle both. I don't know who wants to handle that one.
Yeah, I can go first. So I think if you think of AI as having starting with the same senses, the whole idea in the AI is to begin to have the same senses that we have, right? So to be able to have the ability to have computer vision, right? The ability for a computer to be able to effectively see and read content off a physical document, the ability to be able to understand natural language, the ability to generate natural language. So these are kind of the building blocks that, hopefully were on the slide. And the idea fundamentally from our perspective is, if you think of a high volume process, any high volume process in a bank that starts in a document format, so that could be everything from just invoices coming into the bank to physical documents that come in during, a commercial account opening, or come in during, ID verification before an account is opened, or during the process of approving a wire. Like in all of these circumstances, there is the need for some level of being able to verify someone, which sometimes requires looking at a physical document. Some of these require looking at an invoice or a contract, again, looking at a physical document. So computer vision in general can be a process inside ProcessMaker that can be meaningfully accelerated. The second is, the ability to understand that consumer, or, the employee at the bank in natural language, is a second set of processes, or a second category of processes that can be accelerated. And then the third is, processes that require large decision capabilities, large decision tables, so actuarial tables, or being able to decide on interest rates for a specific product based, mortgage interest rates, for example, is a great one, right? All of those are categories where, as we solve that kind of core underlying problem of computer vision, or, being able to make fuzzy decisions, or being able to make, or being able to understand natural language, that we can, and these can be applied, I guess, as part of a pipeline, meaning you can take a paper application, computer vision it, or I know nobody does this anymore, but take a paper application, computer vision it, make an approval decision, and do the ID verification all, as part of a single pipeline. Sorry, Matt, that was a super long answer to a pretty short question.
No problem. One more question here from Ollie. Do you think generative AI could be used to suggest improvements to existing processes in BPMN?
Yeah, so we absolutely do, and our implementation of that is a quarter or two away, but it's going to manifest as A/B testing, multivariate testing. We want a human to describe, the process she thinks is going to work, and let's build that process and put it in production. Then let's have the AI or another human in either situation modify that process, modify process A with, process A.1, right? And let's run the two together and see which one's actually more efficient in the real world. So that's, exactly how we plan to execute on Ali's question.
Thanks, Alex. That's all the questions we have for now. So thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I think it was mentioned on the webinar that you can actually try out this text-to-process functionality on our website for free today. If you go to processmaker.com, you can actually see the free trial right there in the Hero section. If there are any other questions, please submit them now. We will be sending a video recording of this webinar to everyone on the call today, even if you couldn't make it or other colleagues of yours couldn't make it to the webinar. We should have that email out tomorrow with the recording, as well as posting it on social media. So if there aren't any other questions, I just want to thank Alex, Jeff, and Brian for their time today, as well as all of you who took the time to join the webinar. And
thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.